Well, have you heard the latest news? Apparently, Rachel Reeves has, shall we say, really stirred the pot because she's appeared to dig out Labour's old argument booklet, if anything, and has now gone back to blaming Brexit for all of our economic troubles, which obviously, I'm guessing, if anything, she might have forgot this little teeny weeny thing called COVID and the amount of struggle that did have on the country's finances. In fact, because of COVID and not Brexit, but because of COVID, we are still stuck in this fiscal drag because our tax thresholds have not increased. And that and things like it is because of COVID. But of course, she's not having any of it, it seems. More than likely, and admittedly, I could be wrong, but more than likely because perhaps her and Keir Starmer are trying to, shall we say, wiggle us through the EU's back door. Perhaps, who knows, Keir Starmer might, shall we say, have a bit of experience with that. But anyway, she did admit, though, that inflation is too high, but insists all because that we parted ways with Brussels 6 years ago. And while she was over in Saudi Arabia, the Chancellor mentioned that there's public support, apparently, for Labour inching ever closer to the EU. Well, I think the only public support should get to that, because remember, that is kind of sticking two fingers up at to 17.4 million people, who I'm guessing disagree with her. And surely all the Ramonas themselves and all the Labour EU-loving lefties are the only ones who actually agree with her, surely. But she said inflation is too high in countries around the world, including in the UK. And one of the reasons of that is there's too much cost associated with our trade and our nearest neighbours and trading partners. Well, hang on a minute. Because we have now left the EU, we can get bespoke deals for the country, which obviously we couldn't have done if we were still stuck within the EU. So if anything, Rachel, read between the lines. But she carries on and says businesses who face increasing red tape since we have left the European Union for workers who are now locked out of the jobs market in Europe. Well, how about, Rachel? I know this is perhaps a far-fetched idea in your eyes, but how about instead of working in Europe, they work in our country, the UK, where they actually live? I mean, perhaps them putting a bit of tax in the country would be a better idea than putting it in the EU's. But anyway, she talks about the huge benefits from rebuilding some of those relations. And just last week, apparently official figures showed inflation at 3.8%, which is nearly double the Bank of England's 2% target. Because obviously, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm guessing she isn't doing a very good job. But to top it all off, our economic watchdog is apparently expected to cut its productivity trend forecast by 0.3% percentage points. And this apparently would mean the predicted gap in the public purse could swell to a staggering £40 billion. And it looks like we'll be seeing some hefty levy rises at the budget to cover that. And obviously also because of the, shall we call it, the mistakes that Rachel Reeves keeps making, I guess. But the senior Tories, of course, aren't too happy with the Chancellor, calling her out for using Brexit as a pathetic excuse, which they are right. It is not Brexit, it is because surely of COVID, which, when let's face it, half of the world just sort of stopped overnight, didn't it? Well, that's how it seemed anyway, eh? But to hike up taxes at the upcoming budget, the ex-minister Esther McVey didn't hold back, saying it's a rather pathetic excuse for her poor steering of the economy. The reality is Rachel Reeves is single-handedly destroying our economy, and she is totally right, isn't she? And after last year's budget, which included a jaw-dropping tax raid worth £70 billion, the Chancellor apparently promised she wouldn't be back for more, although I'm guessing she might be. But Mr. McVey added, Rachel Reeves said, I'll fix the foundations. Remember, we couldn't hear nothing but that. But anyway, she said, I'll fix the foundations. I won't be coming back. She didn't mention Brexit then, did she? Even though it would have been around for 9 years, she says. But now, because she's destroyed the economy and she's coming back for more, she's got to find other people to blame, which, yes, is a good point. And that's probably why, not only because she more than likely wants to get us back into the EU in some way or another, but because she can't exactly blame herself, can she, eh? Because she'd be joining a job centre with Angela Rayner quicker than I'm guessing she would like. Although hopefully when Reform get into power, they'll all be down the bloody job centre, eh?